Hello party people, it is Will Pemble. I am in the barn and behind me you can see a few fairly big hexagons, and here's the story behind the fairly big hexagons. It's kind of a long story, and this is the beginning of a long series of long videos, and I just got to tell you that. Part 1, the backstory. Once upon a time, we lived in California, and we lived in California for a pretty long time. We lived in Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area. Both Ellie and Lyle went all the way from kindergarten through high school there. But I'm from New York. I grew up in New York. When the kids graduated from high school, they went off to college, and they both went to college on the East Coast. While they were in college, COVID started, and at that time, it seemed like a 5-hour airplane ride away from the two kids during COVID, when nobody knew what was going to happen, was just like way too long. But I grew up in New York. I own a house in Connecticut. So what we decided to do was move back into the Connecticut house so that we could be closer to the kids in case something crazy happened, like, I don't know, a global pandemic got bad or worse. And so that's kind of all over and it's all good now. But here we are still in Connecticut. Another fun fact, I've been to Disneyland probably 300 times. I've made more than 100 videos in Disneyland. I've spent a lot of time there. I know the park, I know the features, I know people, but I've only ever been to Disney World twice. One time when I went to the Star Wars Hotel, the Galactic Star Cruiser, and I went on that adventure, which was pretty interesting. I might make a video about it. I got a ton of footage. And then another time when Ellie and I went to spend the day at EPCOT. I love EPCOT. It is amazing. I don't have any of the history where I'm disappointed by how things have changed or anything like that. I just love EPCOT. And I'm a big fan. Of course, when you think about EPCOT, the first thing you think about is Spaceship Earth. You think about that gigantic, I think it's an isosodecahedron. It's like a 8-frequency geodesic sphere, not a dome, but a sphere. The idea. Here I am in Connecticut. The kids are now graduated from college and they're about to go off to a bunch of more colleges. And so Liz and I are going to be hanging around here in Connecticut. And while we figure out what to do next in our adventure, we're here in this Connecticut house. It's a nice house. It's an okay house. It's a very standard American sort of a place. And we've had it for a really long time. For a really long time, it was a rental property. And so it got treated a lot like a rental property gets treated. And so there's definitely some room for improvement in terms of fixing up the house. And you could look at this in one of two ways. You could look at it like a regular old homeowner and say, oh my gosh, look at the house, we gotta fix this, we gotta change the siding, we gotta fix these rooms, the floor is squeaky, there's like all of these things, and it's just like, you know, 40-year-old standard American tract home. I decided to maybe take a little bit different view of the thing. I decided that maybe I would start to think of the Connecticut house as like a test house, a place to do experiments, someplace where I could drill holes in the walls and it's okay. It's not a super big deal. I got to thinking I wanted to do a whole bunch of different kinds of things at the house. And because I just love EPCOT so much and I was so inspired by the particularly Spaceship Earth, I got to thinking, why don't I build a little EPCOT right here at the test house in Connecticut? Why don't I build Connecticut? Right over there, that's where I want my 1/10 scale Spaceship Earth replica sphere to go. That's what the hexagons in the barn are. This here is one of the hexagons, which is made out of 6 triangles, and that's a pentagon. It's kind of broken and a work in progress there, but a pentagon obviously is made out of 5 triangles, and they're a little bit shorter and everything. And then the geodesic sphere, Spaceship Earth, is made out of, well, I think for Spaceship Earth, it's made out of something like 6,000 triangles. Mine is going to be made out of 200 or so of these triangles, and so I'm making 200 or so triangles here in the barn, and this is where the actual sphere is going to go. So the sphere is going to sit up off the ground. It'll be a full sphere, and it'll be supported similarly to the way that Spaceship Earth is supported, with some supports coming up out of the ground. We're going to do those puck lights at all of the intersections of all of the triangles so that we can do some light shows, and we can do some programming and build some software. And I know how to build all of the things that I'm talking about here. Fantasia Fairways, that's like a little golf thing that I built for the kids, just a little driving range, but this is going to be Fantasia Fairways. We're redoing the whole deck. And so there'll be kind of a top golf sort of a thing with computers that track everything off the top of the deck here. If you look at the deck right now, you'll see that the railing is gone, which dude, makes the deck a whole lot better. The kids call it the infinity deck. So the deck is going to be twice as big. That net is going to be replaced with kind of a cooler, different one. And then this whole surface is going to be putting green. You can see some of our samples of different putting green fabrics. I had to stop the deck part of the project for a minute because there's little robins that have laid eggs underneath in a nest underneath the deck. So there's like little baby birds that are growing under the deck. But there's a whole lot of bits and parts and pieces to the thing that's all going to be part of the Connecticut project. This table here, which also doesn't have a video yet, I've built this tool which is designed to bend that kind of steel, that steel mesh. We're going to use that to build what I think will probably be called the Connecticut Catwalk. And so it'll be off on this side of the front of the house. We're going to poke a hole in the, it's fun to have a project house, right? We're going to poke a hole in the front of the house, and there'll be a little kiddie door, and then there'll be little tunnels and alleyways where the kiddies can run around the side and go up and down, and it's going to be crazy and fun. We're going to build a leaping fountain. We want to build a leaping fountain because Liz remembers the leapfrog fountain from EPCOT from way back in the day. And so that's a really fun time to experiment with Arduino controllers and different kinds of computer controllers and laminar flow and pumps and everything like that, and fountains and LEDs and so much crazy fun stuff. What does a golf course thing look like? How can we theme the catio? What does the safari park look like? We want to theme all of those different projects in the Disney World vibe. And then along the way, there's going to be a bunch of DIY stuff. There's going to be a bunch of tools. There's going to be a bunch of how to build all of these different things if you wanted to build all of these things yourself. Some do. Of course, we're going to have a roller coaster built into this whole thing. I am, after all, me, and that's kind of what I do. I've always wanted to build a launch coaster, and I've got kind of a couple of false starts under my belt. It never quite came true. I wanted to do magnetic linear induction. That's a lot more complicated than somebody like me can build safely. Catapult systems, pneumatic launch systems, all sorts of different ways to get a cart going really, really fast. I've also always wanted to build a coaster where you would lie down in the cart, and so kind of like flying, you'd lie down face first. Think you know, Tony Stark, Iron Man. Think Peter Quill jumping out of the ship and flying through space. And then I really started thinking of Peter Quill jumping out of the ship and flying through space when I was at EPCOT, because EPCOT has that Guardians coaster, which in my view is the best coaster slash dark ride anybody ever made ever. I think that Guardians coaster at EPCOT is what Space Mountain wants to be when it grows up. And of course, I'm talking about Space Mountain at Disneyland, not Space Mountain at Disney World, because as we all know, Space Mountain at Disney World is like getting a beating. So the coaster idea that I have is this: Peter Quill's Escape from Nowhere. What I'm imagining is a cart where you actually lie down, face down, looking forward like this, and you are launched from like 0 to 30 miles an hour or something like that. And then what'll happen is you'll be launched kind of like across the yard, up around or maybe over the dome, and then back down and around, and the cart, you know, and the track will finish itself. It'll be an awesome ride. I've talked about this so many times, and I've wanted to build it for so long, but I really love the idea of Peter Quill's Escape from Nowhere. And that's going to be the Connecticut anchor ride. So we'll have that iconic sphere. We'll have our spaceship Mirth sphere, our little, you know, love letter to Spaceship Earth, and then we'll have Peter Quill's Escape from Nowhere, which will be my love letter to that Guardians coaster, which Jeepers creepers, I just love that thing so much. I'm an EPCOT fan, man. Test Track, just like it goes on and on. The food, forget about it. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. Speaking of food, maybe you remember Lyle. I don't know if you know this about young Lyle in a whole bunch of the videos. My kid, Lyle. Lyle ended up heading off to culinary school after he got out of high school, and Lyle is now a trained chef from the Culinary Institute of America. It's like a real thing. Chef Lyle is very, very cool. Since we have access to Chef Lyle and a bunch of his chef buddies, one of the things that I think would be really cool, speaking of food, is to design some Connecticut-specific dishes and treats and food things that we could offer to folks that came to visit Connecticut. Certainly, if you go to EPCOT, you are going to find some amazingly delicious foods. And I don't see any reason we couldn't leverage Lyle's talents and my significant investment in those talents to maybe have some really cool Connecticut foods and wonder. And of course, we might need facilities to produce all of that, which gives us a whole nother raft of DIY amazing projects that we could do. Connecticut is going to have its own menu. What should we call the Connecticut restaurant? What should we call the Connecticut cafe? Tell me, put it in the comments below. And this just occurred to me as I was shooting this particular video. So like, you guys can help build this thing. If you get inspired, if you have an idea, put it in the comments below. Tell me what to do. Let's work on this together. My Australian buddy Chris and I have been thinking about ways to make the sphere even better with maybe LEDs, several LEDs, 22,000 LEDs. Here's the idea. We want to take LED strips with 60 LEDs per meter, all individually addressable so that we can turn them on and off one at a time, do animations and all of that sort of stuff. And then we want to wrap the LED strips around every shared edge of every triangle on the whole sphere. Do the math a little bit and you end up with about 1,100 feet of LED strip, and you end up with about 22,000 LEDs. Fun fact, if you were to light them all at once, it'll cost you about 10,000 watts. So we're going to need some electricity. We're going to need a lot of electricity. And the idea about the electricity is, why don't we put a heap of solar panels on the roof of the Connecticut house? Of course, it's important for all of us to find renewable sources of energy, and this will be an opportunity for us to explore that, learn about that, do some good stuff, and have some fun while we're at it. My idea was to put about 3 times as much energy generating capacity on the roof of this house as we would need to run the house. And that will get more than enough, because I like more than enough of just about anything. So there's going to be a very big solar installation project going on the roof of the house, and I don't know what we're going to name it, but it's going to be part of the Connecticut EPCOT City of the Future Walt Disney vibe. Of course, we need renewable energy as part of our project here. Of course we need that, and of course we're going to do it ourselves, and it's going to be a heap of fun. What should we call the solar project? What should we call that part of our Connecticut adventure? Put it in the comments. One of the things that came up while we were having that conversation was the idea that maybe we could use an awesome hot tub out there, because in the wintertime, dude, it gets cold here in Connecticut in the wintertime. So the general notion was, how about right here towards the end of where the deck is going to be, what about building, I don't know, like a 6-foot diameter cedar handmade hot tub? It gives you the opportunity to work with rough sawn lumber, some really cool tools that maybe you didn't have before, a planer, a jointer. And because the whole thing is Connecticut vibed, what if we were to kind of make it an Avatar Way of Water themed sort of a thing, where we can take the cool, beautiful cedar lumber that we're using and maybe some cool epoxy resin, use Avatar sort of colors. What would be a good name for an Avatar themed spa hot tub? Might ought to put a cold plunge next to it. All of these wonderful projects are at our disposal, and we can theme the whole thing kind of as we go. So, you know, clearly I have to fix up this house, and I'm excited about doing it. But what I want to do is I want to do awesome storytelling while I'm at it. Help me tell the story as we go through all of these different projects. Of course, we're going to do the crazy sphere. That's going to be awesome, and that is project number 1. We might even be farther into the project as I'm shooting this video than it might appear in this video. As soon as we're finished putting together the sphere, we got to finish the deck. Of course, we got to finish the deck. There's no railing on the deck right now. The deck is the golf course. The deck is going to be the hot tub and the spa, the Navi spa, or whatever we're going to call it. And that's going to be amazing and fun. While we're doing the deck, we're going to rebuild the garden, because the garden was just put together a couple of years ago when we didn't really think we were going to be here for that long. But it does look like we're going to be here for a while. It does look like we're going to hang on to this house. It does look like it deserves the love and attention that a house of mine would normally get. And so that's part of the project as well. And I want to include you guys in it. A lot of these are basic standard home improvement projects. I know that, I get that. I'm not fooling anybody, and I'm not trying to fool anybody. But storytelling is important. Storytelling helps us make sense of why we do things, what we're doing them for, who we're doing these things for. What is the bigger meaning in a solar project? What is the bigger meaning in a deck, in a hot tub? What is the bigger meaning in learning how to do something and then sharing with others how you did it? Those things are important to me, and I hope they're important to you as well. I can't wait to share with you the rest of this project, and I really, really, really want to thank you for helping me bring physics, family, and fun to kids everywhere. I am Will Pemble, and I'll see you soon.